Soren had always trusted numbers. As an engineer, he knew that the world was built from parameters that could be measured, weighed, and predicted. Numbers had no moods and no hidden intentions. His home on the planet Arcos was the pinnacle of that predictability. It was an old, solid building made of dark wood, where every creak of the floor had a physical cause. He could move through it in complete darkness without touching the walls. He had known every millimeter of that space since childhood. He knew that from the bedroom door to the edge of the stairs, there were exactly 7 steps. He knew that there were exactly 12 steps leading down to the ground floor. He counted them every time. It was his evening ritual, a quiet litany that calmed his analytical mind before sleep. The number 12 was the closure of the day, a guarantee of order. That night, thirst woke him. The house was submerged in dead silence, broken only by the steady breathing of his wife sleeping beside him. He got up barefoot, felt the cool wooden planks under his feet, and headed toward the exit. He did not turn on the light. The glow of Arcos's moon was enough to see the sharp outlines of the furniture. He reached the edge of the stairs. 1, he thought, placing his foot on the first step. The wood responded with a dry groan. 2, 3, 4. He descended slowly, feeling the weight of his own body. 5, 6, 7. On the 7th step, the board made the same characteristic crack it always did. The mechanics of the house were functioning flawlessly. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That was the last step. His left foot should now rest on the flat, hard tile of the hallway floor. He took the step, certain that he would feel the resistance of cold ceramic tile. But his foot did not strike a hard surface. Instead, it sank further into a dense darkness that should not have been there. The engineer's heart pounded violently when he felt under his sole something that was neither tile nor wood. It was the 13th step. The surface was elastic and warm. It felt like a taut, leathery membrane. He froze in a painful position. His left leg was sinking into something that had appeared out of nowhere, while his right still rested on the 12th step. The entire house was silent, but beneath his left foot, Soren felt it clearly. That thing was alive. These were not vibrations of the foundations. It was the steady, slow beating of a heart pulsing just beneath his skin. He tried to pull his leg back violently, but the soft structure of the 13th step began to tighten around his ankle. It was not a predatory grip. It resembled slowly sinking into thick, warm mud that hardened with every passing second. Soren reached out toward the wall, desperately searching for the light switch, but his fingers touched something foreign. The wallpaper, always dry and rough, was now covered with a layer of sticky slime. The mathematics of his world ceased to exist. The 13th step was a wound in space, an opening that was now trying to absorb him. The pressure around his ankle became painful. He felt the leathery matter drinking in his warmth. The outlines of cabinets and doors began to ripple as if the house had lost its rigidity. Everything was becoming biological and damp. Something down there, deep within that non-existent step, began to examine him. It was a long, rough tongue. It slid with pleasure along his Achilles tendon, leaving behind a burning trail. It was not a bite. It was a test of material quality. The engineer knew that if he placed his other foot there, the 13th step would close over his head forever. He began to yank his leg, but every sudden movement produced a wet, smacking sound as if he were pulling flesh out of the entrails of a great animal. "Soren!" He suddenly heard a whisper coming from the very bottom, from the absolute blackness of the hallway. The voice sounded exactly like his wife's voice. It had the same tone, but there was an elusive falseness to it, a mechanical stiffness. It sounded like speech generated by a voice synthesizer. "Why aren't you coming down? I'm waiting for you here, on the 13th step. It's so soft and warm here." The engineer felt his blood freeze in his veins. His wife was sleeping upstairs. Whatever was calling him from below was only using her parameters to lure him deeper. He could not respond. Fear squeezed his throat so tightly that every breath was a struggle. The figure below began to move. He heard the heavy, wet rustle of fabric against the floor. That thing was crawling toward him, using the slime on the walls, as if the house he had lived in for years had suddenly indexed him and decided that the time had come for the engineer to become part of its skeleton. "One more rib," the voice whispered, this time right by his knee. Soren felt an icy draft of air on his skin, smelling of old copper. "We are missing exactly one rib for this cage. Your bone structure is ideal, Soren. The numbers add up." Suddenly, he felt the 13th step begin to pulse violently. He felt leathery protrusions piercing the skin around his ankle and pushing beneath his muscles, searching for a connection to his nervous system. The house did not just want to eat him. The house wanted to install him. It wanted to use his engineer's consciousness to better manage the processes of decay in its foundations. In the darkness, he saw thin red blood vessels beginning to grow out of the walls, wrapping around the stair railings like vines. Only the biology of survival remained. With the last of his strength, Soren yanked his leg with such fury that he heard a clear, dry crack in his own ankle joint. The mass finally released him with a loud, disgusting squelch. He fell backward onto the stairs, tumbling upward toward the safety of the upper floor. Every step he passed now felt hard and dead. When he reached the bedroom and slammed the heavy oak door shut behind him, the moonlight seemed like the only pure thing in the universe. His wife woke up, staring at him in terror. "Soren, what happened?" He could not force out a single word. He only stared at his feet. On Soren's left ankle, there was a clear, deep mark. The skin in that place was completely white, arranged in the shape of 5 long, unnaturally thin fingers that had left permanent indentations in the bone. The marks did not fade. They seemed to pulse with their own faint light. When dawn came, he gathered his courage and went downstairs. There were exactly 12 steps. Ordinary wood, old nails, dust in the corners. Everything had returned to normal. However, as he walked through the hallway, he noticed one detail. On the wall, exactly where he had touched the wet wallpaper during the night, a new bulge had appeared. It had the anatomical shape of a human ear, hidden beneath the layer of paper. He noticed that the ear trembled gently with every word he spoke. It reacted to the vibrations of his voice. From that night on, the engineer stopped trusting numbers. He already knew that houses on Arcos were not dead structures. They simply grow so slowly that the inhabitants do not notice the moment when they become part of the installation. Soren began sleeping on the ground floor, afraid that one night the stairs would simply forget about step number 12.
Earth Arc Laboratory, File 11054.
The atmosphere in the laboratory is stifling. Thomas nervously wipes his glasses, and Simon stares at Soren's neuronal record. On the monitor, it looks like a jagged seismic chart. Thomas: I checked the blueprints of that building. Soren is right. There are 12 steps. The foundations are set on solid basalt bedrock. And yet Soren's biometric sensors recorded pressure on his left leg with a force of 40 kilograms at the exact moment when he should have been stepping into empty space. Simon, look at the results of the spectral analysis of his ankle. This is not mechanical damage. This is a change at the molecular level. The calcium in Soren's bones was replaced at that location by cellulose and lignin. That building literally began to absorb him. It was turning his body into structural timber. Aga. The worst part is the audio recording. The camera saw nothing. To it, Soren simply stumbled where there was nothing. But the sound, those whispers, this is not the speech of a living being. It is the vibration frequency of the wood itself, modulating into human words. The house is speaking to him, Thomas. We are recording this as living matter anomaly. He has already begun to belong to it. Agatha turns off the monitor. For a moment, the only sound in the laboratory is the quiet, rhythmic ticking of the clock on the wall. Simon notices that the ticking now sounds somehow different, wet, as if the mechanism has been filled with a dense liquid.
Additional stories and materials not available publicly. Buycoffee.to/butterflyproject.